Let's get started with our application by investigating Imgur's API for fetching images. In this section, we're going to sign up for Imgur's API service, make a few requests using an API client, and then talk about some of the data we'll be requesting from Imgur. So the first step is to open your browser and navigate to imgur.com. Once here, on the top right, we'll find the sign up link. And you can choose to either sign up with an email and password, or in my case, I'm just going to OAuth with Google. Cool, and you can see I've already got an account made up here. I haven't posted any images on it, so don't bother looking. Once you've created an account, on the top left, you'll find the hamburger menu. Go ahead and click it. And then towards the bottom is a link that says Developer API. So this is what we're looking for. I highly recommend bookmarking this page. It has a tremendous amount of documentation, and out of the many APIs I've worked with from public companies over the years, they've really got some fantastic documentation. For building sample apps in particular, it's a great source of free data to just kind of seed an application with a bunch of random images and comments and whatnot. So once we're at this page, on the left-hand side, we'll find Register an Application. You can't make requests to Imgur's API without having first registered your application. Registering your application with Imgur will give you an API key that we'll use to authenticate all the requests that we make to Imgur. So if you click on Register a application, and it looks like the link isn't working, no problem. We're just going to scroll down a little bit here, and we'll find the section Register an Application, and we can go ahead and click this link, and there we go. So this brings us to the page to register an application, and I'm just going to use the word application name. The application name here is not really important, so we'll just use Imgur Client. On authorization type, we're going to select anonymous usage. The callback URL we're not going to be making use of, but it does require you to enter one. So in my case, I'm just going to put in google.com. And then for my email, I'll go ahead and enter my email. And the description is test client. Finally, we'll enter security code and submit. Okay. So now we get our client ID and our client secret. Both the client ID and the client secret are something that you're going to want to copy paste and make sure you don't share your client secret with anyone. If you are tracking your project right now in a GitHub repo, be very careful. Make sure that you do not paste the client secret key into your GitHub repo and then post that up to github.com, because anyone can then see your secret key and make use of it. There's really no financials tied. You don't obviously don't have to submit a credit card with Imgur, so it's not a huge deal if your client secret gets out in the wild. Obviously, because I'm showing you mine right here. But in general, you want to carefully protect your API keys in general. Okay, so now that we have our client ID here, this enables us to make requests directly to Imgur's API and fetch data from it. So we're now going to download what's called an API client and test a couple of requests here and make sure that we can actually pull information off of Imgur. For this next part where I download the client, I'm using Chrome, so I'm going to download a Chrome-specific API client. It is totally not required that you be using Chrome or that you actually download this extension. If you choose not to download the extension, no problem. You can just watch as we walk through a couple of requests, just to get a feel for the type of data that we're getting back from Imgur. So I'm going to create a new tab, and at the top left, I'm going to click this apps link. Again, this is all very Chrome specific material that we're going through right now. Next, I'll click on Web Store. On the top left, we'll search for a API client that's my personal favorite. It's called Postman. And the top result here, it's an application. I'm going to add it to Chrome. And we get this nice little pop-up here. And that's it's really that easy to do. We're going to go ahead and launch the client. So the purpose of this Postman client right here is just to serve as a platform that we can make requests to third-party APIs. It's not really required for our application. It really just gives us a better sense of the data that we're working with. The interface is a little bit confusing to get used to. Basically, all the work that we're going to be doing is right up here at the top. So we select the type of AJAX or the type of HTTP request that we want to make. In this case, it's going to be a GET. We enter the URL that we want to target, and then we can just go ahead and click send. So for example, if I enter google.com and then I send, this is the HTTP response from issuing a GET request to google.com. And it might look like gibberish, but if you look kind of carefully, well, maybe very carefully, somewhere in here you're going to see the HTML that forms the google.com homepage. So this is really just a for example right here. On the top left, I'm going to clear my history real quick. All right. So let's go ahead and get started by making a request to Imgur.com's API. I'm going to go back over to my browser, and we're going to bring up the documentation on the left-hand side here for an API endpoint. We're just going to make a simple sample request to the gallery endpoint right here. And what the gallery, you can see the documentation here is, again, it's really fantastic. If we make a request, a GET request to this route, we will get the images in this particular gallery. So for example, if we want to get the main gallery for when you hit API, or excuse me, just Imgur.com, and you're immediately presented with some images, we would hit this endpoint right here. So I'm going to copy this link, go back over to Postman, enter the URL, and then click send. And immediately you're going to see, well, if you want to make this request, you require authentication. And what this is saying is you need to enter your API key. So we'll do that right now. If you go back over to Imgur, and I'm going to pull my API key back up here really quick. I think I might have lost mine. Let me go back really quick to it. Okay, so you'll see here in the documentation it says you need to add the header that says authorization, client ID, and then your client ID. So we'll do that right now. I'm going to copy my client ID, and then we're going to add a header of authorization, client, was that capitalized? I forget. Client, capital ID. ID, and then a space, and then our client ID code, and then we'll hit send, and fantastic, here we go. So this is an example of the data that we're going to be getting back from Imgur. You'll see that there is a top level object and then a data property which contains an array of images, and each image has a bunch of information about it. It has an ID, title, description. If the video, or if the image is actually a video, it will have a link to the video. It will tell us the number of upvotes, the number of downvotes, whether or not the image represents an album, and we'll talk more about that later. And then also very important is the animated flag, which we'll talk about later as well. So in this section right here, I just want to walk through the process of fetching data from Imgur and the initial sign up. Let's get started on the next section, making use of this data.